Okay, should we begin? You're muted.
We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Don't forget to get your chat ready to go. If you have any questions for Patty, give us like one more minute for a few more people to come. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, I'm ready to get started. Thank you so much for hosting. It's such a privilege to be able to do this work, especially at times like this. I see we're broadcasting live on YouTube. That's a first for me, and there's a lot of firsts that we're going to be encountering with this. So I would love to just check in and see who's in the room and acquaint everyone with all of the features that Zoom has to offer. Some of you might be on your smartphone, some of you might be sitting at a computer, but if you hover over the video, you'll see down at the bottom, there's a mute button, there's a chat button. Does everyone see the chat? I just want to make sure I get a sense of who's in the room. So if you could just say hi to me in the chat box, that would be great. I'm a in real life kind of person. So one of the things that I'm really missing in trying to make the transition from in real life events to webinar style events is that engagement and seeing y'all's faces. So I miss it. So these little chat box hellos really make a difference. Okay, great. And there's a way you should be able to chat to everyone. And then there's a way, if you have a really personal question, you can chat it just to the panelists, and this way it won't be broadcast to everyone. Okay. So let's begin. I initiate a lot of my workshops with an exercise of joy checking your day, especially at this time when we're not feeling very centered and there's a lot of noise in our lives right now, a lot of massive transformation and change taking place. I just want to guide you through a simple exercise to help you feel grounded. And so wherever you are, if you can be present and still, I should make sure you know my name first, I guess. I'm Patty Morrissey. And this is called the Jesuit Examine, or it's modeled after Ignatian spiritual exercises. I call it the daily review or the daily joy check. And so get planted, put your feet on the floor, get really stable in your chair. If you're sitting on the floor, you want to do crisscross applesauce, that's fine too. Just be comfortable and still. Okay. So in that stillness, become aware of your breath. It helps to close your eyes, and I'll model that for you now. Just close your eyes. And feel yourself breathing. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It doesn't have to be the best, deepest breath you've ever taken, but try to activate it in your belly if you can. Often we're breathing really in a shallow way and we don't even realize it. So try to drop it down into your belly. Get still. Then expand your awareness and imagine yourself surrounded by unconditional love. That could be a source that is a God figure to you, the universe. It could be a loving grandmother figure. Sometimes I like to imagine it's my older, wiser version of myself, but just that unconditional love embraced fully by that. Okay. And once you're in that place and soaking that in, review your day, the last 24 hours, with gratitude. I actually like to imagine scanning my day like the hand of a clock, and it's taking me from, dinner time last night until this moment right now. What are all the things that I'm grateful for? If you have a little notebook by your side, that's great. This can be a journaling exercise that you use, or sometimes it's just a thought exercise. So whatever you choose. And as we go along, feel free to pop in some of your answers in the chat box. But some of the things that I'm grateful for are good weather, access to nature. Lucky to live here on Long Island where we have access to nature. Grateful for my daughter and her receptivity to cuddling, which she is more or less sometimes so into it and sometimes not so into it. Lately she's been into it. Okay, these little things. What are we grateful for? Okay. Then the next step is to check in with your heart. This is getting out of your mind and getting out of the thinking mind, but trying to get into the feeling embodiment. Okay, in that heart space, and try to feel it in there. Sometimes it helps to actually hold your hands to your heart as you're doing this. And ask yourself, when did you feel the most alive today or the last 24 hours? When did you feel the most alive? Being here with you is that for me. I'm fortunate to have a job that makes me feel really alive. I had a 90s dance party with my daughter last night. I felt pretty alive then. We roasted marshmallows and made s'mores with Reese's peanut butter eggs. Highly recommend it. Made me feel alive. Okay. What are those moments that you felt the most alive? Joyful is another way to phrase it. Okay. Then check in with your heart. When did you feel the most drained? That kind of energy sucking out of you kind of feeling. Okay. When did you feel the most drained? Could it have been consuming the news too much, or not getting out of your pajamas until 5 p.m.? No judgment. I'm just acknowledging some things about myself that have made me feel drained over the last few days, last day. Okay. Then we've acknowledged kind of what makes us feel alive and what makes us feel drained. The next step is to ask yourself to become aware of your shortcomings. When was it that you could have shown up better? And with this one, I always add the caveat that you have to practice this one with a heavy dose of compassion. This is not an exercise in being critical and judgmental. And considering the extraordinary circumstances that we're all coping with right now, that's especially important. So the more compassion that you can give yourself, the more honest you can actually be with yourself. And that's really important. So often we make this critical voice really loud when we're not pleased with ourselves in a certain situation, thinking that if we just bully ourselves, then we'll submit and do the thing, we'll show up better, we'll have a good day, we'll perform to a capacity that meets our expectations. But it's actually that critical voice, the louder that gets, the more clouded we are, and we're not actually able to see ourselves for who we really are. But if we're kind and like, well, how did today go, darling? Well, today was kind of a crappy day. I was like snapped at my daughter, and um, I didn't really get as much done as I wanted to, and I didn't make the best food choices. Oh, that's that sounds tough. Talk to yourself like a kind person would talk to you, like that loving grandmother figure, that loving source that we called in at the beginning of this. And just become aware of those moments and just recognize them and acknowledge them. So when could you have shown up better? Okay. And with that, we're going to let that go with a lot of forgiveness and a big, heavy out breath. Let that go. Let that go. And so now we have all of this intel. We've acknowledged what brings us joy, what makes us feel alive. We've acknowledged what drains us. We've acknowledged the abundance that does exist in our lives right now. And we've acknowledged some areas that we want to improve. And so that should inform you for tomorrow. And so this is about looking, then the last step of this daily review process is to look to your tomorrow, to your future, and say, what's something I can do differently? How can I have a better day tomorrow? And this is going to help you, especially, this is a practice I've been doing for years, but it's especially important now as we're living in a day-by-day situation. We feel out of control. We cannot control what's happening around us, but we can control our immediate mindset. We can control our emotional state. We can control our thoughts. We can control how we set up our home environment. And so that brings us to the topic today, which is about spring cleaning. And so I'm going to go through the normal content around that, but I just kind of I'm going to frame it a little bit in the situation that we're in. So sometimes when I start talking about organizing and cleaning and maintaining an orderly home, people can associate those kinds of things with perfection and type A kind of personality people, and they can impose a lot of things onto themselves when we start talking about this. I want you to throw all of that away. This idea of perfection. I threw that away a long time ago anyway, but especially now. So our homes are taking a beating. They're taking a beating right now. I see all the funny memes out there about, I should just move. I saw a funny one today. It said I should just move the big garbage can like from the garage into the kitchen because, like, let's be honest, I'm constantly taking out the garbage, or there's constantly a mound of dishes, flooding the sink. And so this is about coping. I want to talk about coping right now, and the importance of having a supportive home environment. And so I was just on the phone with my accountant, and he was saying, I feel like college Josh. And what he meant by that was like, he's gotten really lazy and he's gotten really messy and slob, he feels like a slob. He's procrastinating on things, he's scattered, and he's not making healthy food choices like college Josh. You can just kind of imagine it, right? And I said, well, Josh, he's someone who normally goes to CrossFit every single day at 6 a.m. on his way to work. It's not so much that he's all of a sudden turned into this lazy person. It's that he's lost all of the environmental triggers to his day. There's nothing guiding him to say, okay, the reason he goes to CrossFit consistently every single morning is because he's on his way to work. He wakes up, he gets dressed, he goes to the gym, and then he goes to work. And all those little things prompt us in the same way that, like, on your morning commute, you get off the train or you get out of the car, you walk down the street, you see the sign for Starbucks, it prompts you to go inside. You go inside, you get your coffee, the smell of coffee sort of wakes up, it's time to work, and you go to work ready to work. We've lost all of that. So setting up a supportive home environment is one that's going to set up these environmental triggers to support you in the right way. So that's one of the objectives that I want you to think about when we're talking about spring cleaning right now. I also want you to think about the different functions that your home needs to serve for you. Are you living alone? Are you living with a whole family? Did you have to move from your current home to another home and shelter in place with someplace that you're normally not living? How are you, I was just talking to a client, she lost all of her staff. She's used to having a cleaning person in her home. She's used to having someone cook all of her meals for her family. And so now she's having to learn all of that in addition to all the other responsibilities that moms have right now around homeschooling. So we're all in a different place. So I'm going to do my best to kind of speak broadly, but I want to acknowledge that everyone's in a different situation, and please use the chat box to share your perspective. If, hey, could just go ahead and, like, it might feel like interrupting, but just go ahead and spew it in there and just say, hey, what about this situation, or what about that situation? And just do it while I'm talking. Or if something's resonating with you, again, I'm speaking to a computer screen right now. I can't see nodding heads. I can't see that you're sleeping and I'm boring you to death. Like, I have no idea. So please just, like, let me know how I'm doing. If something is resonating, say like me too, or totally agree, or all of that chatter in the chat box is very welcome. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so that you can see some slides. Give me a moment. Here we go. Share screen, Google Chrome, share. Okay, and then present. All right, here we go. So I always start a lot of my workshops with this quote too. I love it. What better way of avoiding work than going to a workshop? So we have a lot to take in right now, a lot of change. So my hope ultimately is that this workshop inspires you to take action and to make even just one small change in your home. Okay, I'm seeing some conversation. Great, love Stephen Pressfield. Awesome, thanks for that feedback. Okay, so the method of organizing that I adhere to is the KonMari method. And when we're talking about spring cleaning, it's really a comprehensive decluttering effort. This method is quite intense, but it's actually really gentle. So that what makes the KonMari method is that it's a once in a lifetime tidying event. One of the biggest barriers for people doing this is time. So if you're one of the people who, is quarantining and you feel like you're bored and you've got a lot of time on your hands, I know that that's not everyone. But if you are in that camp, this could be an incredible opportunity to do this. It's also a process that is intended to do alone. So if you're totally alone in your home and you're isolated, that's an ideal scenario to be in to go through this process. What you do in the KonMari method is that you touch every single object that you own, and you only keep what sparks joy for you. At the end of it, you find a home for every single object so that there's a designated place for things to go. It's getting dark in here. I'm going to turn on my light real quick. Excuse me 1 second. I didn't anticipate that. Okay. I'm back. Okay. And ultimately, it's about living a joy-filled life. Okay, my slides, let's advance them. There we go. Okay. When people have heard of the KonMari method, they've typically heard of the method of folding, but there's so much more to it. So I just wanted to acknowledge that if people have heard about it, they've typically heard about this. There's tons of videos on YouTube for how to fold in the KonMari way. So I'm not going to waste time giving a folding demonstration right now, but when you're up to that place in this method, go ahead and just Google t-shirt folding KonMari, and you'll find plenty of resources on that. That'll be more useful to you when you're in the moment with it. Okay. And so a little bit about my background. I started my business about 4 years ago. And shortly after I started my business, Marie Kondo, who is the founder of the KonMari method, launched her certification program for consultants. It was the first time she offered that outside of Japan. I jumped on to that opportunity and became one of the first certified in the world. I was then hired to be her instructor. I teach all of her training seminars, and some of them have had to been postponed because of all of this. And now my colleagues and I are offering virtual tidying lessons to people. So people are stuck in their homes, they've got the time, and we're there coaching them along the way in this process. So I'm missing everyone in person, but typically I'm working with people in their homes. But it's been really encouraging to see how resourceful and empowered people actually are once they realize, and they don't, when I'm there with my clients together, often they kind of lean on me a little bit more. Now that they have to lean on themselves, they're seeing just how capable they are of doing this. So I encourage all of you to give it an attempt. So this is really difficult, kind of being in our homes. And one of the things when all of this situation went down where we had to be in our homes for an extended period of time was just, I felt this heartache for people who don't feel good in their homes. And some of my colleagues were like, this, we shouldn't be promoting our tidying services right now. People have a lot on their plate. And I was like, I really disagree, because this is a time where people really need us and really need this kind of support and guidance, because not everyone is as fortunate as we are as professional organizers to live in a really calm and orderly environment. My daughter describes our home. It's not perfect by any means. It's a very kind of like well-loved, lived-in kind of home. But she described it as calm. And I felt like when all this happened and all the changes that I even needed to make into my home, I was ready for that. And I had those skills to make those transitions really easily. So if you're finding yourself in your home and it's suffocating or overwhelming, you're not alone. You're not alone. Clutter is a universal issue, and not just a universal American issue. It affects everyone all over the world. And a lot of my clients that I've worked with, they've dealt with their clutter by not being at home very much. They're really ambitious, incredible people who are involved with, volunteering in their community and, doing well in their jobs. And part of what they just say they avoid being at home, but now they have to be at home, and it's really difficult. So I shared this story a lot in my presentation, just to acknowledge that beneath the clutter exists a lot of triggers for us, things that we want to avoid. Inside every home, there's some version of these baby shoes never worn that are going to bring up sad memories or things that you wish you didn't have to think about. So in this KonMari process, it's very gentle. So you're not going to have to address the sentimental objects at first or ever if you don't want to. It starts off with some of the really easy stuff, easier things to go through, like clothing or kitchen stuff. And the sentimental boxes can be kept until the very end. So we already did this, the joy checking your day. Okay, there's 6 rules of the KonMari method. The first one is that we commit ourselves to tidying up. The second is that we imagine our ideal lifestyle. The third is that we ask ourselves if things spark joy for us. The next is that we tidy by category, not by location. So that means I'm not organizing closets, I'm organizing clothing. The next rule is that we go through these categories in a particular order. And that's for the reason I just stated, which is that we start with some of the easier things and then build up to sentimental. I'll definitely explain joy. Good question. And then the final rule is to finish discarding first before you focus too much on finding the perfect home for things. Because the perfect home for things doesn't really exist. It's ultimately, where do things need to be to serve me in this moment? So I've made a lot of adjustments to my home in the last few weeks, because my living room needed to be a workspace for my daughter, a school space. And so we had to juggle some things around to make that happen. I wanted to have some of these environmental triggers set up so that when I'm in my office, it really signals work. When I'm in my kitchen, it really signals family time and connection, or play and crafts. There's things like that. So the environment is going to trigger certain activities. So where you keep things will depend a lot on the space that you have available, as well as what kind of activities you want to prompt in that space. So I am going to explain joy, but I have a separate slide for that. So I'll get to it definitely. So this first rule of committing yourself to tidying up. So some of you might have all this time on your hand and be like, yes, this is going to be the month where I finally go through the KonMari method. Some of you might be playing like this is triage, and you've got 4 kids at home and you're still working your full-time job, and you don't have that kind of bandwidth. So set your commitment level to what's appropriate to you and your situation right now. What I will say is making that initial investment in time of even just taking a day or 2 off to properly set up the environment will set you up for success in the long run. Instead of just diving into the work week, diving into the school week, but giving yourself the space to properly do what you need to do in there. In Montessori, they talk about this idea of the prepared environment and how important that is. If you do have little ones at home right now, taking the extra steps to set up the environment so that they can learn how to help themselves is going to help you a lot. So it's not all mom, can you get that for me all day long? But if you take the cups and bring them down and put them in a lower drawer, now they can help themselves to water, right? That's one thing you don't have to do anymore. If you can provide a little broom and a little towel, so if they have a spill, they clean it up themselves, moving things down to their level so that they can be more independent and empowered. That's a whole nother workshop that I can do, but just wanted to encourage you to think about, if you're in triage mode, maybe your commitment isn't to do this whole effort, but maybe your commitment is just to make some tweaks to make it work for you right now. Okay. So this is something that I talk about often in my workshops, is this readiness for change. So on a scale from 1 to 5, or 1 to 10, excuse me, how committed are you to making this work and making the change? What's a silver lining in this moment is that it's forcing change. It's, look at the way that we've had to just figure out technology. I saw something on social media of like, who led the digital transformation of your company? Was it your CFO? Was it your CTO? Or was it COVID-19? And it just, all the people who've been like the laggards or the late adopters to technology just have to figure it out. So sometimes in life when we're transitioning, the motivation comes because where we're at is so bad that you have to make the change, or the necessity requires the change. So ultimately, what we're talking about here is life transitions. So the time to tidy is when you're transitioning from one phase of life to the next. You're having a new baby, right? So all of a sudden you have to reorganize how you have your environment set up so that it's a baby safe environment. So what does it look like to set up your home to be successful and supportive in the midst of massive time spent at home, where you have to perform so many different functions at home? So I think we're pretty motivated right now to make this work. So I'm not gonna go on this one too much. The next one is to imagine your ideal lifestyle. And at this point where it feels like, imagine your ideal lifestyle, like the world's falling apart. What are you talking about? This skill and practice of visioning is so important. I'm doing a 7-week course on transformational leadership right now. And this Sunday when we had class, a quote was shared that the antidote to despair is imagination. The antidote to despair is imagination. And it's being able to imagine a better future, even in the midst of so much challenge. And that's what turns trauma into transformation. It doesn't mean that we ignore the realities of what's difficult right now, but it means that we don't know what's going to happen. We cannot predict it. So imagining the worst case scenario is not better than imagining the best case scenario. So when you imagine the best case scenario, what you choose to keep in your life and how you choose to act is going to be in alignment with that. If you imagine the worst case scenario, what you choose to keep and how you act is going to reinforce that. So allow yourself to imagine your ideal lifestyle right now. Think about that in the terms of the next few months of we're locked inside. What does this look like? How do we cope and survive this? Imagine the best outcome there, but also allow yourself to imagine on a bigger time scale. So what that looks like for me right now, imagining my ideal lifestyle at home, is there's some routine, there's peace, there's harmony, there's laughter, there's learning, there's progress, there's connection. Um, I'm putting myself 3 months ahead right now and looking back and saying, what are the things that happened that made that go well? Right? It's not fighting, it's not sitting in bed all day being depressed, it's taking care of my hygiene, it's being proud of myself and how I responded to that. And so that's a really useful tool. If you can imagine yourself a few months from now and look back on it, what might you regret not doing? Right? So that's really guiding me right now. And so I wanted to share that and I hope it's helpful. So it's really helping me. I'm choosing connection and love really above all else, and like basic self-care above all else, which means that a lot of times my daughter doesn't get her homework done, but I kind of like don't care about that. I'm choosing connection above all else. So what do you want to manifest in your home right now? The future, manifesting the future, thinking about that ideal lifestyle, is thinking about things like, oh wow, we're going to live in a world where so many more people are proficient with technology. We're going to live in a world where people are more tuned to gratitude. People are more compassionate with one another. Maybe this is going to alleviate some of the red and blue fighting that's been happening in our communities for so long lately. Maybe this is the cure for that. Maybe the birds come out and there's more nature to enjoy. Like all these things, sort of like imagining what's possible. So allow yourself to dream at whatever level. And with this, you could journal, you could talk it out with a friend, you could make a collage, a vision board collage is a fun exercise to do. But suspend reality here. One of the things I say often is pretend you could wave a magic wand, okay? So ultimately, this is about life transitions and these little micro seasons. And I want to highlight this one, which I often talk about, but even more so now that we're all locked inside. So there's some research that was done of looking at people who spend a lot of time in nature. And when people spend a lot of time in nature, they're getting feedback that time passes, right? They're observing that, oh, the spring is popping on the trees right now, and the daylight is getting longer, and the air is getting warmer, and they're observing it, but they're feeling it kind of at their core, at the cellular level. They're getting that biofeedback. Those people who have that connection are more resilient because they don't just have an intellectual knowing, but they have an embodied knowing that time passes, that everything is temporary. So they know how to savor things properly, but they also know how to, if things are bad, then they know that this is just temporary. This is a temporary situation. And so, but on the inverse, the more time we spend indoors in artificial environments, on screens, where things don't change around us, the more stuck we feel. So it's really important to find a way to acknowledge that time passes in your life. And how to do that at home right now is decluttering. When you go through your things, you're going to come across clothing, books, papers, objects, gifts that people have given you, sentimental objects from your past. And you're going to acknowledge that, oh, that part of my life is over. I can let that go now. Just like I can let the trees can let the leaves go at the end of the season. It's going to put you in touch with more of a natural rhythm of just life goes on. And you can realize that bad things have happened to you before and you've survived them. Good things have happened to you before and you enjoyed them. So you can like feel that wave. And this is just another wave. This is a dip that you're experiencing right now, but you're not in there forever. So decluttering is one way to be in touch with the natural rhythm of life. Obviously, being in nature and being outside, trying to observe it, even if it's from your window. You know, I have some clients who live in New York City and they're like really stuck inside right now. And so it could be sitting and doing a little nature journal of noticing the change on the leaves will help with this process. But decluttering is part of that, so I wanted to mention it. As you're going through your things, pull out the good china. You know, Easter is coming up, Passover is coming up, making sure that you take out those decorations, take out the special plates and napkins, and enjoy the seasonality. One of the things that I did in my home this week to enjoy the seasonality was I had all these clothes in my closet. I'm not going to throw them out because I enjoy them and love them, and this is not going to last forever. So I didn't just throw away anything that wasn't sweatpants. But I made a capsule wardrobe of spring. So all the clothes that aren't that, I put them in the basement. And they're just sitting there on a hanging rod. And in my closet is just colors and flowers and pinks and yellows and blues. And this is sort of a transition one. It has flowers on it, makes me really happy. It's a way to sort of be in this season right now. So those little things can really help, okay? So this is where I talk about joy. So what does it mean? What does it mean to keep only things that spark joy? Ultimately, it's about listening to yourself. I'm going to unpack this one. So first, starting with this poem. This is The Voice by Shel Silverstein. There is a voice inside you that whispers all day long. I feel that this is right for me. I know that this is wrong. No teacher, preacher, parent, friend, or wise man can decide what's right for you. Just listen to the voice that speaks inside. Okay. One of the things I love so much about the KonMari method is that it trains us to listen to our inner voice. And this has implications beyond tidying, beyond cleaning, besides deciding what to keep or not. But it has implications in like what you should do and how you should lead your life, because no one knows what's right for you except you. And at this moment in time where so much is changing and so many people are running around, no one knows what to do. Even the experts don't know what to do. And so how you should spend your day or what kind of self-care is going to be useful to you or not really has to come from that place of listening to your inner voice. So the daily joy check that we started off with, where I asked you, when did you feel the most alive today? Is the question of what sparked joy for you today? What made you feel alive? And so that joy feeling is going to be, it's going to be coming from this heart place. Your shoulders are going to go back. You're going to smile. You're going to brighten. You're going to feel alive. That is joy. Sometimes joy looks like getting lost in the moment and losing track of time, kind of that flow state. Sometimes it's easier for people to recognize the opposite of joy, like disgust or despair. And that's like, and that that scrunching of the nose is typically a telltale sign. So when I'm with clients and I'm trying to teach them this discernment around joy or not, they often get lost in their minds, or they get lost in what's expected of them from other people. Well, this is like, it's just a white shirt, it's fine. Like, well, fine doesn't sound a lot like joy. And just because like the Gap called it the essential t-shirt doesn't mean it's essential in your life. So this is permission to be unapologetically you. And just because someone else said you needed it doesn't mean you actually need it. And you can say, thanks so much for that suggestion. I'm going to let you go now. And then once we kind of slough off the expectations of like the commercial world, the outside world, there's often just the noise in our mind of, well, how much did this cost? and, well, someone gave it to me, and all that kind of obligation. And then it's getting back into your heart and getting centered in that place of, how do I feel about it? How do I feel about it? This is especially important at times like this. It's going to be probably, no, definitely more confusing to discern joy in these times of fear and scarcity than what it would normally take. But the attachment to stuff is often either involving an attachment to the past, and often that's what I'm dealing with people. And then a smaller portion of my clients have a fear of the future mentality. More of us are in the fear of the future mentality right now of, could I afford it to replace it? Money's scarce and tight right now. I don't, right now I have a job, but I don't know if I'll have a job tomorrow. I don't want to throw anything out. I mean, I found myself like, I haven't eaten bread in months, and I'm like eating hamburger buns because I'm like, it's food, can't throw it out. Like, and then I'm like, Patty, what are you doing? Like, it makes you feel like garbage. Don't do that to yourself. Like, it's okay. You don't have to eat the bread. Your daughter can eat the bread. She likes it and it doesn't affect her the same way. So even I get lost in it, but I can get myself back on track with the tools that I've practiced for so long. Okay. So if you follow this, and honestly, right now, the donation centers are all closed. So don't be afraid about making a mistake. Don't be afraid about discarding something that you might need later. It'll be in a box in your basement until the donation places open up, okay? So just allow yourself to really stick to this joy factor of, does it make me feel good or not? Hoarding toilet paper, hoarding cleaning supplies, hoarding bags of rice, those things, like, if not to an extreme level where you're now preventing someone else from accessing those things. I'm talking about a reasonable, appropriate, that's appropriate right now. It doesn't mean I love having all this surplus around, but it's appropriate. It makes me feel abundant. It makes me feel equipped. It makes me feel grateful that I had the means to go out and like do a big shop and have these supplies at hand. It makes me feel good that I don't have to go to the grocery store so often and expose myself to, the risks right now. So what success looks like, even though, like, behind me here, see this? I have I have extra bags of flour because my daughter likes banana bread that I make her. Normally, this is like a curated, beautiful China situation back here. I had to reorganize some things to suit the situation right now. But try to trust yourself in that joy feeling and practice it. It's going to reattune your energy field from attachment to the past and fear of the future, and put you in more of a present, in the moment state. Around attachment to the past, I will say my practice in this method has really helped me cope with this current situation. And I feel like I had a head start in sort of the recovery and emotional resilience from all this, because it was just sort of immediate recognition of, oh, this is happening. And life as I knew it is over. Thank you, life as I knew it. I have to let you go now, because this is the reality. And I'm not causing unnecessary suffering to myself right now by being overly attached to how life was a month ago. There's grief in that, for sure, and gratitude in what I had. But immediate recognition and acknowledgement allows me to move more quickly in painting a picture for the future and activating on that in those terms. So that's my pep talk on joy right now, okay? The next rule is that we're going to do this process by category and not by location. The reason for doing this is so that you can assess just how much you have. When you drag out all your clothes from the attic and the basement and the under the bed boxes, and you make the mountain on top of your bed, you're going to realize how much abundance you have in your life. It's going to help you see that you have a lot, and there's a lot that you need, and there's a lot that you don't need. And when you're able to let go, it's going to help you feel even more grateful for what you have, and you'll feel abundant in that. When you do discard items, it's important to express gratitude for them. I had mentioned thanking the objects. It's going to feel super awkward at first, but do it, and do it out loud. Thank you, yellow t-shirt, for teaching me that yellow is not a great color on me, or thank you for the memories, old concert t-shirt, I can let you go now. It's going to help you, and it's going to help you practice and be in that state of gratitude, just like we practice with the daily joy check. But keeping a gratitude journal and things like that can be a difficult discipline to maintain. But we're constantly going through our things, we're constantly touching our objects. And so this process will actually train you to experience gratitude in the habit world. BJ Fogg just came out with a book called Tiny Habits, and he talks about the importance of a prompt. So ultimately, all of your objects in your home become a prompt. So every time I use my little, these are Italian wine glasses, and I have kombucha in them, not wine, although that would be great right now, right? It's just like, you're so cute, I love you, and I remember exactly where I got you, and I really held out for a long time before I made the purchase, and just, I feel so happy, and I don't take anything for granted. So when I'm doing dishes, it's just like a little moment for gratitude. When I'm doing the laundry and folding and putting things away, it's a moment for gratitude. So imagine at this point in time where we're feeling so so overwhelmed and so out of control and so like scarce and fearful, to be able to fill your home with things that are prompting a state of joy and gratitude. And ultimately, that's what this process is all about. So go by category and not by location. Another reason why this is really helpful is that it's going to help you focus. So focus is a challenge for many of us right now. But in this process of where it can be really overwhelming, you're not trying to make a decision about receipts and boxes and food and books and all this all at once. You're just making a decision around clothes right now. And then anything else that is in that space, you can just ignore and keep the blinders on and just stay focused on the clothing. Okay. The next rule is that we follow these categories in a particular order. So ultimately, this order is designed to be the easiest to the most difficult. Easiest to the most difficult. For some of you who are doing triage and you're trying to just make space in the home for all the kids and all the school and all the stuff, if you have the bandwidth to do this in this order, I still would recommend it, because what's going to happen is you're going to free up a tremendous amount of space when you're going through clothing. You're going to free up a tremendous amount of space when you're going through books, and you'll have the space on your bookshelves, so that when you're in this phase of organizing all the miscellaneous stuff that you have around the house, you'll have opened up spaces for those things to go, if that makes sense. But you know, these times are unprecedented, so feel free to start with Komono if you need to, if you're trying to organize the living room and share kitchen spaces to accommodate all the additional activity that needs to take place in those spaces right now. You can do that if it's necessary, but following it in the order will be easier on you and less overwhelming. Definitely do not recommend ever starting with Sentimental. I definitely don't recommend ever starting with paper, because paper is not a joyful category, and that can be overwhelming as well. Okay. So along those lines that I mentioned of freeing up space, it's the importance of finish discarding first, so that you can open up space and you don't have to go out and buy organizing products. The stores are closed right now. There's no need to spend additional money on fancy closet systems or organizing products. So this is an example of a little girl's bedroom dresser that we did. We did her entire space. We did all of her. Yes.
I'm sorry, we have a question.
Oh, yes, I missed it.
Do you go, here we have a question on the chat. Do you go through all of your family clothes, or do you do one person at a time?
That's a great question. So this is an individual process. So generally it's me as a mom in the house, I'm doing my own things on my own track, and my daughter's doing her things on her own track. But when I work with families and they're doing it all together, they've all committed to the process together. Sometimes I'll do mom first so that she learns, and then mom will work with the child next on clothing, and they kind of volley back and forth like that. But it's super fun to do it kind of, if everyone's on board to do it together. Sometimes I'm in situations where only, one partner wants to do it, the other partner is not interested at all. And so it's really just about focusing on your own things. But even if you've done this, it is, we do say it's a once in a lifetime event, but there's always an opportunity, especially with kids, it's a constant cycle for them because their needs are changing, they're growing so quickly. But last week, my daughter and I concocted a wild plan to switch bedrooms. And I moved a king size bed by myself from one room to the next. Like, I was a little sore after, for sure. But we went through everything that she owns, and we moved her bedroom. I moved all the contents of her bedroom and all the contents of my bedroom, and then even got our guest bed involved in the mix up. And it took us a day. So that's after you do this process and you're only left with the immediate stuff, you know, moving all of her things. And she had it in her room and she put it all back exactly as she wanted it, but she discarded a bunch. She discarded a lot of her dress up clothes and clothes that didn't fit her anymore. And it was a good exercise. So these are life skills that you're developing too. So when you're thinking about how am I going to use this time in isolation wisely, tidying up like this it's not like cleaning your bathroom where you do it and then like 2 days later it's back and being a mess and nothing was accomplished. When it comes to tidying, it's a muscle that you're building, that it's achieving the result of a neater, more organized, more beautiful space, but it's teaching you skills and it's teaching your family skills for life. So think about it as that too, as that investment in time. So storage, you know, typically when you're reading articles or reading books about organizing, the focus is on storage. You can see I only leave a little sliver of space for actually how to store things. Ultimately, if you're keeping only things that you love, storing them carefully is going to be natural to you. There are a few principles that I will share. One of them is vertical storage. You can see here all the t-shirts are folded vertically. In the closet image here, you can see that there's long clothes on the left and short clothes on the right. And that creates this upward, up to the right motion in the closet, which is a joyful thing. There's also, from a practical reason, space now at the bottom where you can store some other things. So it's more efficient use of the space. Here we have that little smiley face in the drawer. That's a sentimental object. So instead of having sentimental bins and bins up in the attic or in the basement that you never enjoy, we encourage people to sprinkle joy around the house. So take those postcards that you've been collecting and line a drawer with them, for example, or put them in behind your kitchen cabinet to look at and relish. So bringing those things out, I hang little pieces of jewelry that I love but never plan on wearing, and I put them on a hanger, hanging with my clothes, and they're just there and add a little bit of sparkle to the closet, and they have no other utility for me except just that I love them. So thinking about that when it comes to storage. Paper organizing is a task, and it's tax season. So I think a lot of us have either felt the joy of having perfectly organized paper system, or we felt the pain of not having an organized paper system. But ultimately, this is about simplicity. So having your paper fall into 3 categories: take action, keep for forever, or keep for reference. So taking action, I have one spot where all the papers that I need to deal with live. I have one spot, it's just an envelope, a plastic envelope, which you can see here on the top right, where all of my keep for forever papers are. And those are things like birth certificates and wills and deeds. Not to be super morbid, but getting our affairs in order right now is really important. So part of my practice when I'm working with clients and myself too is this practice of contemplating my own mortality. In doing so, it you think about what kind of experience you want to have if you had an emergency, or if you were suddenly rushed to the hospital. Like being able to point to a place of all of my important documents are exactly in this one place is going to give you a tremendous amount of peace of mind. A lot of the anxiety that we're feeling at this moment in time is like, what if something happens? And it's not just what if I lose that person, but like, the fear of what's going to happen with all this stuff. So part of this decluttering effort, part of getting your papers in order is getting your affairs in order, because then you know that's dealt with. So I can go back to just enjoying my life, because I know that I've thought these things through. And so I'm less afraid of the bad situation when it comes. Okay. And so really isolating these need action papers from the keep for forever papers, and then the keep for reference. This is the one where people really, it gets out of hand and they have all the articles and all the things. And so this is actually kind of a moment of reckoning. So if I am I love paper. I actually do. I'm kind of a paper collector. For being an organizer, I do have a lot of printed articles and things that I want to read one day. But what happens is I keep some of those papers, I'm always coming across them. And so I realized, okay, it's been 3 months and you haven't done it. So here we are sitting at home. It's kind of a point of reckoning of, all right, if I'm not going to make the recipes while I'm isolated and have all the time in the world to make all the things, if I never actually access that paper, that recipe file once, it's time to let that go. So this can be a great kind of narrowing opportunity. I said I was going to mend that skirt. I didn't. So it's time to forgive ourselves from all the things that we had intended to do. So if we didn't do it now, we're never going to do it. Okay. Just some, yeah, go ahead. Questions? Anything? No?
No.
So I encourage you to think about, when you're storing things and placing them, is thinking about, again, the environmental triggers, the prompts to the behavior that you want to see. This is a kitchen. It wasn't particularly messy. It looked gorgeous when you looked at the surface. Inside, yeah, it's a little messy in there, but not too bad. But she wasn't using all those things. So it was getting in her way. It wasn't necessary. She discarded a lot of it. But what she wanted to do, when I talked to her about what's your ideal day like in your kitchen, she goes, I don't really cook that much. I order a lot of takeout. I want to make green juice and I want to enjoy tea in the morning. And I just don't, because it's such a pain in the neck getting the juicer out with all the attachments that it has. So we got it all together. We made space for it, and it just lives here on the silver platter. So she opens up her cabinet. It's really easy to pull it out and use it. And her behavior started to change as a result. So thinking about, in every area of your home, what's the ideal, and how can you set yourself up for success by setting how you set things up in that space. Same client, another example from her is, this is her little tea spot. Okay, so she had spices originally there. They were very difficult for her to reach. We placed them down in a drawer instead on the right. And then in that place, we put her tea area. So we've got all of her beautiful things that she loves, and her teas are more organized. We put them in a box. And up at top is an empty shelf where maybe she wants to put up some sentimental objects later on. So she's creating her ideal day. She's creating her ideal lifestyle by how she has things organized. It's not that this is the best way to organize tea, but for her, when she opens that cabinet, it's giving her a prompt. I mean, even when I look at it, I kind of think, I'm going to have a little moment right now this morning with my tea. And that's what she was going for with that. Okay. So finally, one of the things I have seen people doing at this time is pulling out their sentimental bins and enjoying it. And that's really beautiful to see. So if you skip all the other categories and you do decide to start with sentimental, I do not want you to feel the obligation to discard so thoroughly, but just kind of unpack them and enjoy them. So the reason we have sentimental objects is because we either want to remember the past and have those, have that prompt to remember some positive points in our life. We also keep sentimental objects because we intend to pass down or intend to share that story with other people. But how those things are packaged and curated for our loved ones is really important. So this is an opportunity to go ahead and dig those things out. If you're alone, enjoy them on your own, or use those things as a prompt to reach out to someone from your past. Send a text or schedule a call with that long lost friend or family member that is in those family photos that you have. Ask them for the story or tell them the story that reminded you of. I'm always doing that and sending, you know, the goofy college pictures from my girlfriends and saying, remember this, remember that. And it's always a really good time, but we often are so busy running around. So this, again, this is the reframing. We didn't choose this. We didn't choose to be stuck inside, but could we use this time to enhance our lives in some way? And I think unpacking those sentimental bins is a really great opportunity. For me, when I was sort of bracing myself for this phase that we're going through right now, said, what would I regret in 3 months? And one of the things that I acknowledge that I would regret is making a lot of progress on the sentimental project. So this image is a slide that I uncovered that my grandfather had. He had these slide reels, and he had kept such meticulous notes of when the photo was taken, who took the photo, where the photo was. And so I was able to find this slide based on his notebooks. It said slide reel 8, slide number 36. This was a picture of the magnolia tree that was outside of their home. I also know that my uncle David, who had died when he was 18, is the one who took this photo. So there's a lot of, he gave me quite the gift by packing this stuff up for me. He's not alive anymore, and he wouldn't have been able to tell me this stuff, but he gave me the gift of that interaction. I feel very connected to him and to the history of our family because of the effort that he put into that. So that's an opportunity. If you are finding that you're stuck at home by yourself, could you curate some of these memories for your family? So my project is to go forth and digitize more of the slides and discover some more of the gems that I know are hidden in that space. And I would be really disappointed in myself if I didn't embark on this at that time. So that's the one project I'm sort of putting on my plate as we're dealing with this. Okay. So ultimately, this method is not about how perfectly clean our homes are, but spring cleaning is a tradition in a lot of cultures, or cultures do it at different times. Like I know in I think it's in Japan, it's more part of the New Year celebration of having this opportunity to revisit the past year through the lens of the things in our home and clearing the way for what we want to cultivate in our life moving forward. And so there's some things on here that represent what brings me joy, like visits with friends and new experiences and intimacy and creative expression and exploring new places and being out in the woods. And of course, where I'm feeling a little bit detached from some of those things right now, but finding creative ways to set up my home environment to facilitate these things that are so important to me, and which ultimately is going to help us cope with all of this. So that's what this process is all about. So some simple things that you can do. Missed the first 3 rules. I don't know. I guess, are we sharing a recording?
Yes.
And if you're interested in this topic, you can always learn more by reading the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. She just came out with a new book called Joy at Work, which I have not read yet, but it's about using some of these principles to create a joyful work environment, which is important even if we're working from home. So some simple actions that you can take. So some of us are like, yes, bring it on. I want to do this. And now I've got the time. It's perfect. Great, go for it. For some of us, it's like, that sounds nice, but like, I don't have time for that. What's one simple thing I can do? So one simple thing that you can do is greet your home. So this is starting from a place of gratitude. Our home might not be what we want it to be. We might not be stuck in the most joyful place right now, but it's providing us a place. And I do think that there is kind of recognition. I know when I'm having conversations with people, they acknowledge, like, yes, there's some disappointment or some loss in their life, but they're feeling grateful for having a house. They're feeling grateful for having food and not having that be a chief concern. So greeting your home is about expressing gratitude and just saying thank you. Thank you for providing me shelter and a place where I can be with my family to weather this storm. right now that we're going through. So just finding the sliver of gratitude that you have, or the immense gratitude that you have for your home right now, and any changes that you make in your home coming from that place of appreciation and not disgust of, oh, this house is so horrible, like, that's a problem, and that's a problem, and that's a problem. And instead starting from the place of, thank you for performing your job so well. You're about to take a beating now with us being home all day, so I'm going to put a little bit more care into your house, and thank you for being there for us, because we really need you right now. It's just a different tone. Next thing that you could do, which is a little thing, is make a vision board for your ideal lifestyle. That would be a fun family project. It's something I do every single year. Grab all the old magazines that you have piling up. You can declutter those, and just that'll help you imagine a joyful future. The next one is joy check your socks, or a little micro category. So if it's not all of your clothing or your entire kitchen, maybe you can go through your sock drawer. Maybe you can pull out, I'm here in my kitchen, so I'm looking around. I'm like, take out all your mugs. Everyone always has an abundance of mugs, and really choose the ones that you love the most. I have been seeing people on social media are like doing little selfies with their mugs every day. That's a fun way to share your joy. Also, all the little treasures that you come across, and using that as a way to connect with other people. Another thing is carving out the time. So I said, this is one of the biggest things when it comes to the commitment level. If you're in the fortunate position, maybe making a goal to yourself to get through some of these categories, or perhaps going through the entire process. And then I'm here, guys. So another thing that you can do if you want to have more of a private conversation, because this is very one-sided, I'm not hearing from you what your specific needs are. I offer free phone consultations, and I'm, on this learning curve with adapting to the use of technology to do the coaching that I do. So I'm here to offer you support and guidance. My website is clearcultivate.com, and you can find me there, or on Instagram at Patty Morrissey, and that's where I post a little bit more of like my personal life and fun stuff that I'm up to. So I'm here to answer any questions that you all might have, if you do. All right, we've got a shy bunch. No worries. Feel free to send me an email or give me a little tag on Instagram, and I will comment when I can, when I see those things come through. But I so appreciate your time, and do not put pressure on yourself if the laundry's piling up right now, or if there's dust bunnies in the corner. Allow your cleaning to be therapeutic to the extent that it is, and know that when you're cleaning, it's not to impress anybody, but it's about setting yourself up for success and creating a supportive environment. And here's my kitty who's looking for some attention right now, so he'll say hi to you guys. Hello, this is Mac. I have Mac, and I have another cat named Cheese. Thank you so much.